Welcome, humans! Well, I'm super excited. We're just a few days away from the release of the Super Mario Brothers movie, and my god, has this been a long wait. Like, I cannot begin to describe how excited I am. While the original movie had a lot of charm, this one is pretty much the movie and many others have been waiting for since we were kids. And thus, with this momentous occasion, I think a little treat or a big treat is in order. Like many others, I'm going to be staying down to watch this movie with all my friends. And thus, we need to have food for this. And especially considering the titular Mario, I think we need to make a special meal that is up to par for the Italian plumber. So, let's get started. This is super easy, and it's a pretty good recipe. Alright, let's get started. To a large bowl, we will be adding some ground beef. Make sure it's not the lean stuff. We do need some fat in this. You can also add some ground pork. We're also going to be adding here a little bit of garlic powder, some salt, a little less than a teaspoon, but this is up to taste. And top of this, we will be adding some. Anytime now, dude. Okay, we're gonna add some pepper. This doesn't have to be fresh ground. This is stuff that I have lying around. But we need to make sure that everything else is in portions. Like, for example, here's some oregano, some basil, and to this we will be adding some parmesan. This is, be careful with what you're gonna use. It doesn't matter which one you use. Oh, and wait, where's the panko? Oh, you Nimrod! Well, what are you gonna do now, genius? Wait. Oh, what do we have? Okay, some crackers. Make sure that there's no salt in these. These are just plain soda crackers because of the amount of salt that's in the parmesan and also the amount of salt we just added in the beginning. Now, something else we're gonna add is a little Italian seasoning because ideally you could have some panko with some Italian seasoning or some Italian breadcrumbs. We're just gonna do this from scratch because this is what we have and we're not gonna get too technical on this, guys. Okay, let's not be pedantic. We're also going to be adding 1 egg. This is mainly going to help with getting some of the herbs and everything else combined. And yeah, I'm just gonna hand this out because there's no way I'm mixing this with servo hands. And there we go, that's what's basically gonna look like. Nothing, it should be mixed in pretty even, but it's not going to be like a fine paste. So don't worry, it's gonna be a couple chunks. And we're gonna make some balls. Now, ideally, this should be a little smaller than golf balls because anything too big is going to be pretty difficult to cook, and you might end up with something raw, which is going to be bad. Now, to a large skillet, we are going to heat it up to around medium-high. We're going to add a little olive oil, or you can use any oil itself, but considering this is a pretty basic dish, we're going to be using some olive oil. Might be good for this, and it's a good combination. We also have a little bit of aluminum because this is going to cause a lot of splatter, and for my assistant here, I don't want to clean up too much. Plus, this is the good part about cooking this covered. We can get some of the juices and that steam to help cook the meatballs, which means we're going to have some evenly cooked, juicy meatballs. But the most important thing this is that we are not cooking them completely. Instead, what we're going to be doing is searing. This is mainly just to get a nice bit of charred meat on the outside. Now, there is a difference between a burnt meat and this crust. What we want is a lovely darker golden brown. We don't want this to look like a piece of coal. This is not Christmas. No, you can just give this to anyone you don't like. That'll be fun. And I recommend putting the balls in. I recommend putting these in clockwise. This is going to help with remembering which ones went into the pan first, and when we turn them, they're all going to be searing for the correct amount of time. Because otherwise, it's going to be very, very stiff. And it's going to be like chewing on tires. At least I assume. I really don't have a mouth, so I will let the guinea pig decide. Now we're gonna cook this covered, and we're gonna add a little water because what we want is for the meatballs to release plenty of juices. Now it's gonna release a little bit of fat, but I'm not too worried about that. Simply just gonna lubricate the pan. So this will make sure that they don't stick, and we don't have to keep adding too much oil to finish the process. And you see that brown bits that are in the pan? We're going to be using that later on to make a special type of sauce. Because I don't want to add too many things into this. I want the flavors of the meat to actually be pretty pronounced for the dish. After you get your meatballs cooked, and we smash up with some garlic, you might want to be a little more gentle, dude. Seriously. Thank God you weren't a doctor, because yeesh! Malpractice lawsuits would be endless. We're going to chop up a crushed garlic clove. I like plenty of garlic, but you can use the amount that you want. We're also going to use some ripe tomatoes for this one. You can also use stewed tomatoes. This doesn't have to be cut up very finely, like you can see. These are pretty hefty chunks, because when this thing starts cooking, we're gonna have a pretty soft, tender flesh off of this. Now, back into the frying pan. We're gonna let it heat up a little bit, and we're going to add the garlic. Now, you need to be quick because garlic will burn in a millisecond. We're gonna make sure that we add the garlic to the pan. And with a wooden spoon, we're gonna kick up some of the meat juices that are left behind, and we're gonna add 1/4 of a cup of red wine. You don't need to be very fancy for this. You can also use some red wine vinegar, but wine's always better for this. After it's been cooked a little bit, no more than a minute, we're going to be adding our fresh tomatoes. You can also add stewed tomatoes if you really like your meats to be your meal to be very, very saucy. We're gonna do this a little dry because I find that dried or very, very thickened sauces are good for many things. This can be served up as an entree. This can be served up in pasta. But the one thing I want to reiterate is that we do not want to use marinara sauce in this. The problem is it's way too heavily seasoned even for good brands, and it's pretty much gonna undo everything we've worked so hard to make. We also added a little bit of tomato paste just to help thicken it up a little bit. I usually keep some in the freezer. That way I can have some tomato paste available at a moment's notice, and it won't go bad because I practice under Sanji, and we do not waste a single thing when cooking. We're gonna add a little Italian seasoning into the sauce, but we're gonna have a lot of acid, so we're gonna add the secret ingredient to any Italian dish: ketchup. Now, yes, there are so many dishes that use this. Sugar and most of the ingredients in the ketchup is gonna help cut down the acid, which is usually going to be a pain later on after consuming it. And while you're eating it, it feels like you're basically eating meatballs in battery acid. And it's not very fun, it's not very good. Now, to this, we can add some cooked pasta. And we can also wet it a little more with some more water. But also, you can add a little bit of stock to this. But it should be something neutral. From here, we're going to add the meatballs in. Make sure you don't put too many. And the reason why we left the meatballs semi-uncooked is because they're going to finish cooking in this sauce. They're going to release a little more of the juices, and if we leave this for several hours, it's going to be very, very juicy.